Hi everyone, so I know that this video is really dark, the lighting is just an absolute nightmare, and I know that you probably don't want to hear YouTubers moaning about the lighting in every video, but honestly, unless you make videos, you could not understand the absolute nightmare that is lighting, because over here in the UK it is just so dark at the moment. It's just dark constantly, and it gets dark really early, but even when it's not technically getting dark, the light outside is just so kind of grey and horrible that it just makes everything look dark. But I thought that this video isn't a particularly kind of tutorial or anything, so you don't need to have tons and tons of lighting in it. It's just me talking mainly, so I thought that it wouldn't really make that much difference if the lighting wasn't spot on in this video. And I've actually got lights everywhere and it still looks dark, so I don't know what we're going to do about that. But yeah, just before I get on to the kind of topic of the video, my nails are Revlon's Barley Peach, because I always forget to say, and then I'll always get a million people asking me. My nails are Revlon's Barley Peach, and my top is from Romwe. So this video is going to be about body image advice for teens, and I've been meaning to do this video for a really long time, but I kind of just wanted to gather a little bit of information, because I feel like my kind of teen body image experience was quite different to other people's, and I think mine was a little bit worse than other people's. Some of it was down to me, some of it was down to kind of exterior reasons, but a lot of it was very, very horrible and very hard for me, so I didn't want to kind of make a video and just put everybody in a horrible mood talking about my bad experiences. So when you're a teen, I think what happens is you're on that fine line between feeling like you're really grown up and not actually being that grown up, and you always think that you are, and you always think that you know everything. And I know that it's the most patronising, horrible thing to say when people are like, well, you don't know anything because you're not grown up yet. But the truth is, it will be different when you're a little bit older. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that what is the hardest, especially for girls, I'm going to talk about it from a female perspective because obviously that's the only perspective I know, but for girls is you're kind of used to just being a little girl, and then suddenly you start to develop and you get boobs and you get hips, and maybe you get kind of hairs in places where you wouldn't normally have had them before, and it's very, very confusing, because I'm sure every kind of 11, 12-year-old, even younger than that, know what puberty is, and know that, you know, you're going to get a little bit curvier and everything like that. They know it's going to happen. But I think people don't really talk about the kind of side effects of it, and what happens once you start developing, and what happens when your body starts to do things that you didn't really want it to do, like develop stretch marks, for example. And it makes you just kind of feel a little bit ashamed, and I remember just feeling like it was only happening to me. Everything's so dramatic, and I remember just sort of thinking like, this is only happening to me. I've got stretch marks, only I am this huge fat whale. And you don't kind of realise that it happens to everybody. And I had asked around, and no teens that I know particularly wanted to talk about it. And then I realised that it's because it's quite a sort of taboo subject, and it's a subject that doesn't really get spoken a lot about. And I thought that online is an easy place to talk about things like this, because what happens is you've got the kind of anonymity. So if you want to share your story with someone, and you share your story with me in the comments, I don't know you personally, I don't know who you are, but at least you feel like you've talked to somebody, and I think it's just kind of a much easier way of dealing with things. So you start to kind of feel a little bit different and a little bit weird, and I know you kind of always feel awkward. That's what I can kind of remember. You just feel awkward, and like everything's just not quite right, and you start to kind of compare yourself. And I think the comparing thing is one of the biggest traps that we start to do as teens, and then it continues on into our adult life. And what happens is you end up comparing yourself to other girls, and other girls who, you know, have got flat stomachs than you and look better in clothes than you And I remember the clothes thing was always my biggest fear. I was always paranoid that everybody else could look nicer in clothes and I always just looked awful in everything I wore. And you have that kind of, I've got nothing to wear, and stropping about and all that kind of thing. And I know that people kind of think, oh, it's just, you know, it comes with the territory. And it does come with the territory, and it does tend to go away after a while as well. But at the same time, it also can kind of set a pattern to how you're going to become. And I know that when you're like 14, 13, you don't really think about who you're going to become, but it really, really does set a pattern and affect who you're going to be when you're older, and how your body confidence is going to be when you're older as well. Because I think that my issues stemmed down from quite a young age, and that I'm now kind of finally getting to the root of them and kind of getting over it a little bit, but it has taken me a very, very long time. And hopefully, if, you know, talking about it and watching videos like this can help anyone else avoid getting to that point when they're older, then that would absolutely be amazing for me. But you kind of feel a little bit confused about what your body's doing. And I also remember that whereas some people have problems with developing very quickly, you also have the problem of not developing and comparing to other people who do, which I always felt really self-conscious about not having big boobs. I always really wanted to have big boobs, and mine were quite small, and I hated it. I wore push-up bras. I absolutely hated it. Now, that's one of the things I'm quite glad about, because I can make them, I know it sounds weird, but I can dress them bigger and I can dress them down if I want to, and I like that. I just think it kind of looks a little bit more elegant, and I think it can just kind of be easier, and you won't have as many problems when you're older. That's not to say that if you've got big boobs that that's horrible. If you've got a big chest, then you're very, very lucky, and I'm sure you look amazing in most clothes. But I just feel like I always wanted to have what I didn't have. So I always wanted to be skinnier than I was. I also was quite conscious about my height, which is something that now I'm not. Did you hear that noise? That was the post. Which is something that now I'm not remotely conscious about. Yes, I'd like to be a little bit taller. I'm 5'1.5", so I am very small. I would like to be a little bit taller, but I don't really think about it. It doesn't really bother me. I'm not overly fussed about how tall I am. It's not something that kind of plays on my mind ever, really. But when I was a teen, I remember that everybody else was taller than me, and I didn't like that. And I felt like everyone else had boobs before I did, and I didn't like that either. And then I also remember feeling like I had stretch marks and wobbly bits that other girls didn't, and this was a really, really big thing for me, because I still sometimes kind of feel like that now, even though now I know how common it is, and I know that it's something that, you know, everybody goes through, and that it's completely normal. But at the time, it was really, really hard for me to kind of accept that, you know, that's just what happens. You become a woman and you get those kind of woman things. And I think kind of the main thing to take from this video really is that you have to try as hard as you can to be positive, because if you teach yourself to have a positive body image, that is going to carry with you for the rest of your life. And you really, really want to try and spare yourself the kind of depression and horribleness that comes with having a bad body image. It's just not worth it ever, in my opinion. And you don't want to end up feeling like you don't want to end up feeling like you're less than anyone else. And I remember that kind of inferiority complex where you feel like everybody else is better than you. And then when you go up a little bit, you realise that that's not the case, and you realise that all those people that you were jealous of and that you thought that everything just came really easy to, it wasn't like that. And later on in life, they'll have their issues, and we all have our issues. And you just have to try and remember that as horrible as it gets, it does get better. And I know that's a complete kind of teen cliche, but it does really, really get better. It kind of gets easier in certain ways. In some ways it gets harder, but it gets easier for you to be able to kind of tell yourself that you're being silly and be able to kind of pull yourself out of it. And try and surround yourself with really, really positive friends, because I think that has a huge impact. If you're in with a crowd that's kind of, especially with girls, I find they're very nitpicky and very bitchy, and it can kind of just ruin your body image. So you've got to really try and be as positive as you can. And I'm not going to kind of go into the whole cliche of, you know, tell yourself that you love yourself and all that kind of thing, because I don't really think that anybody does that. But at the same time, I do think that it's very important to work on having a strong body image. And I know that if I ever have children, and if I ever have a daughter, I'd feel really strongly about making sure that she grew up to have a really strong body image, and to never kind of feel like your body is who you are, and that it's kind of lesser because it's not as perfect as other people's, and other people's isn't perfect either. You just think it is. It is very much a case of comparing, and the grass is always greener. But I would absolutely love to know if any of you have got any kind of stories or concerns to share, or if you've got any other kind of video ideas with this type of topic. I've written a couple down, which I'm going to try and get filmed before I go away, but I've written a few down, so I've got a couple of ideas, and I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.